such a time as this.
Welcome to For Such a Time as This, the place where there is no such thing as a silent witness. I want to play a clip from the Tucker Carlson show from the Fox News channel. The one thing I appreciate with Tucker Carlson is that when he says something, he predicts something, and he is wrong. He does not mind saying he's wrong. I was very disappointed with Tucker Carlson when he was pushing the quarantine and the shutdown and all the other stuff, not looking at the fact that what the government had to take away in the form of rights was the only way that they can push it. Well, now he's singing another tune. And let me get very clear. Let me be very specific. Everyone knows the coronavirus is real. Everyone knows people have died from the coronavirus. The debate is whether or not it's as bad as they say it is. That's the debate. Does it warrant shutting down the government the way we have? So it's pretty lengthy, but it's worth it. Here's Tucker Carlson as he examines what the government has done in this corona hysteria.
But first tonight, things are moving so fast in the country right now that it's often hard to see what's really happening. And so it's important to pause and compare our past assumptions against what we know has actually happened. To do that periodically gives you clarity. In that spirit, you might remember that a month ago, as the country began to lock down, we were told that mass quarantines were necessary for a very specific reason, not for a general reason, but for a precise one. The lockdowns were designed to, quote, flatten the curve. Coronavirus patients were likely to overwhelm our hospitals completely. We feared that. They would break our system and leave the entire country without adequate health care. So flattening the curve meant slowing the rate of transmission of the virus in order to prevent that disaster from happening. Our leaders in our media class were very clear about this. For example, on March 10th, Vox.com told us this, quote, a disastrous inundation of hospitals can likely be averted with protective measures we're now seeing more of. Closing schools, canceling mass gatherings, working from home, self-quarantine, self-isolation, avoiding crowds to keep the virus from spreading fast. More than 2 weeks later, that was still the consensus. On March 27th, the New York Times told us the same thing. Quote, slowing and spreading out the tidal wave of cases will save lives. Flattening the curve keeps society going. Now, that seemed like a sensible argument. It made sense. We made the same case on this show repeatedly, but we were wrong. For reasons that still are not clear, the models that our authorities used to make key public policy decisions, those models, by the way, already had the effects of a lockdown factored into them. Those models turned out to be wildly inaccurate. They massively overstated the number of patients who would need hospital beds. In some cases, their estimates were off by nearly a full order of magnitude. That error was great news for the country. It was an unexpected blessing in the middle of an unfolding disaster. But it was also a moment to rethink the policies we had based on those models, the ones that were wrong. We never did. Instead, our leaders pulled a bait and switch. Without ever acknowledging the change, they began to tell us that the real point of quarantine was to defeat the virus itself. On April 8th, the Washington Post announced that, quote, flatten the curve had become crush the curve. Quote, we should not end social distancing and reopen the economy until we know the infection rate is nearly zero. Nearly zero. So
nearly zero. We shouldn't open the government until the flu virus is nearly zero. We shouldn't open the government until the common cold is nearly zero. How foolish is that? I think it's very clear, again, with the behavior of the government. This was something other than the coronavirus. Our government has done something that I don't know at this point how bad it is, but it's not good. It's not good when in Mississippi you could go to a liquor store and buy all the booze you want, but if you drive into the church parking lot to hear a pastor preach, you get a $500 ticket in Greenville, Mississippi. That ain't good. It's not good. Here's what here's what the church is going to face now. I think as time goes on, and it's clearly not as bad as they say, it is. What are we going to do as Christians and as a church? At some point, we have to make a decision. There is a commandment. There is a command that says, do not forsake the assembling of yourselves, which is the habit of others. But we are to come together as a church. And so that is a command. And if it proves to be that the government is playing games with the numbers, then what do we do as a church? My church, as a matter of fact, is going to reassess on the 15th and 16th. Those were the dates given by the government by which the peak was going to happen and the hospitals and the healthcare was going to be overrun. At the end of the 16th, if that's not the case, we as a church have a discussion to be had, because we are not going to defy our Lord. See, there was a tension. Yes, you respect the governing authorities, but at the same time, the ultimate authority is who we ultimately are accountable to, and that's our God. So 15th and 16th, your church should be having this discussion. It's not easy. It's tough. I hope churches don't split over this. But at some point, there is the commandment. Do not forsake the assembling of yourself. Boy, what do we do? But at the very least, stay strong. We preach the gospel, and we tell people that the coronavirus and death already has a vaccine, and his name is Jesus.
For such a time as this.